Today we're going to talk about finding your own sound. It's one of the most common pieces of advice or instructions that we hear as producers. It's one of the most sought after things, our own sound. How do we find it? How do we achieve it? How do we create it? How do we make our music be recognizable against everybody else's? How do we stand out? Let's have a chat about it and see if we can get to the bottom of it. LOLO BX! What's up? It's LOLO BX on this episode of Just the Tip. We're going to talk about finding your own sound as a producer. Now, obviously, everybody watching this is going to be at a different stage in their production journey. I recommend, personally, when starting out, you should be spending a considerable amount of time experimenting with all different genres. You really want to be making music right across the spectrum, regardless of which genres you may be interested in at the time. The skills that you develop doing this are fundamental when it comes to creating your own sound down the track, creating your own blend or your own flavor of music. You really need to have an eclectic palette and know how to create all different types of sounds, all different types of genres. They really each have their own little areas of finesse. If you've wrapped your head around them, it makes your life a lot easier and it makes you a lot more versatile in your own production, and it really helps. So before trying to nail down on your own musical brand, I'm just going to assume that you've spent however long. I won't really put a timestamp on it. These days, with technology and resources available, it is possible to learn production in a shorter time span than it once was. If you think you've got enough experience experimenting with all sorts of sounds and you've got a general idea of where you want to take your sound, then it might be time to start knuckling down into your own musical brand and your own musical palette. Now, how we get there, from what I've learned purely from studying my favorite artists and the ones that stand out the most as having their own unique sound, is over time you should be developing a library of certain sounds that you like, certain sounds and elements that you use in your songs. Whether it's a sample library, there's literally no limit you can put on this. I don't really want to box you into any ideas, but it might just be a little vocal snippet that you have in every one of your songs. It could be a certain effect that stands out, whether it's a certain type of synth, just a little split second stab, something that's instantly recognizable and different to everybody else. If you just start plugging that into every one of your songs, that's just one little tool that you can use to create your own sound. What we're going for here, when you really break it down, your own sound is your own musical brand. And all branding is repetition in its most basic sense, right? So like Coca-Cola, for example, that's probably the strongest brand I think of when I think of branding. Everything's red, everything's got their logo on it. Like, it's repetition. It's not boring, it's their brand. A few musical examples of this would be San Holo's little swirl sample. If you listen to his back catalogue, basically every one of his songs had that little swirl. And even his soundscapes, still to this day, like, he's got awesome sound design. His synths are like so bright and sort of ethereal. I can tell San Holo song almost straight away when I hear it. Just the way that he writes his melodies, they're always so happy and bubbly, and his synths just have that certain sound to them. You can recognize them straight away. Things like that. In my experience as an artist, it can feel like you're boxing yourself in too much, and it can feel like you're being too repetitive. It feels a little bit lazy or cheating in a way, but it's not. It's a little bit counterintuitive because people tell you to be creative and start every song from scratch and think outside the box, and you can do all these things, but when it comes to creating your own sound, by definition, that sound needs to be consistent. So you need to be pulling things from your previous songs, little elements and little themes that you can put throughout your future music. My boy Oski has that vocal tag. Is that Oski? He puts that in pretty much all of his drops, although I think he's got a pretty unique sound as it is. Very hip-hop driven, whatever genre you might want to place him in as a bass artist, right? I think his beats are always quite hip-hoppy. They've got that strong beat vibe rather than an EDM feel, if you get me. But yeah, Oski's vocal tag is another one. LOLO BX and I'm. These things are very specific, so that's probably the easiest way you could do this, is just decide something. It doesn't have to be a vocal tag, it could be a sound, it could be a sample that you've cut from somewhere else. Be careful with copyright, obviously. Even with instruments, things like if you've created a synth that sounds different to most other people and you've used it in one song and it was effective, save it in a folder. Over time, you should be building up your folders of all your presets, all your favorite basses, leads, plucks, your favorite drum samples, things like that. We don't want to get lazy and make every song off a template using all the same sounds, but if you can bring small elements from one song to the next, that's the easiest way to work on your own sound. Obviously, there's a whole other realm when it comes to production, sound design, and songwriting, and that's things like your composition, the way that you write melodies, chord progressions, the way that you work rhythm into your music, your drum beat. They're usually more subconscious, in my opinion. As your skills develop as a producer and an artist, you just have certain tendencies, and those things usually take care of themselves as a common theme throughout your music. Your little sample library is like a little cherry on top. Everything else should really take care of itself. Most artists will actually tell you that they haven't really consciously tried to develop their own sound. It's just something that develops itself, which is basically another very valid answer. Your own sound comes from years of hard work and making song after song after song, and you will just develop habits and ways of writing music and producing music that happen naturally over time. The short answer is your own sound is something that happens naturally over time. After you've experimented with a whole bunch of sounds and then you've gone off and tried to write your own music, after you've written song after song after song after song, there will be similarities between the music, even if they're not immediately apparent to you. Other people will pick them up because you write music how you write music. You made the music, it sounds and feels like you wrote it. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is the little things that you can do on top, icing on the cake. Pay attention to those, and remember, you're trying to brand your sound, and branding is in essence repetition. So look for something that's cool, that stands out, and something that you can repeat throughout your music as a common theme, and that will be really effective, in my opinion, in branding your music as yours, standing out to every listener. And these things are important, especially in a world where things like Spotify, you don't really have much of a chance to engage with the audience in any way other than through the audio. So the more things you can put in your music that let the listener know who made the music and recognize it as yours, the better. That's about it. As always, I've also typed this up in a blog article linked below. If you liked the video, leave a like, really appreciate it. Drop a comment below, let me know if it helped or if you've got any other tricks, tips, if you hated it, if you disagree with anything. If you know anyone else that would get anything out of this video, make sure you share it with them. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, the button is right there. And if you hit that little bell next to it, you will get notified every time I upload a video. At the moment, it's 2 to 3 times a week. I've got heaps more on the way. And that's about it from me. Until next time, peace.